What's up, my peeps? Joshua Smith at GSD Studios, and welcome to another Jim and Jay show. So who the hell are Jim and Jay? Jim and Jay are my personal health, fitness, nutrition, biohacking, overall life optimization mentors. These are by far the two biggest badasses that I've ever met in this space. I don't know anybody when it comes to these topics, you guys, that's more knowledgeable. So we created this show for our GSD mode listeners to have an opportunity to go out there and submit your questions here to the show. If you have any questions you want answered on the show, shoot us an email at JimAndJay@gsdmode.com, and we will do our best to answer all your questions here live on the show. Also, real quick, want to plug our sponsor that makes this show possible is www.chekd.com/TRT Revolution. So on the show, Jim, Jay, and I talk a lot about getting your blood work done, checking all your different levels, your hormone levels, making sure that your body is operating at its most optimal self, right? So that is the company that Jim, Jay, and myself all use. So again, www.chekd.com/TRT Revolution. So let's jump on into the show. What is up, our peeps? Joshua Smith here with another Jim and Jay show. Ask Jim and Jay show, where every single week you submit your questions and we ask Jim and Jay your questions live here on the show. So who are Jay and Jim? Jay and Jim are my personal health, fitness, nutrition, biohacking, energy management mentors. These are the best people in the space that absolutely dominate and absolutely kick ass in the space. So this gives you the opportunity to ask any questions. We don't care what the questions you guys that you submit are. Maybe everybody's in a different position, right? Some people maybe want more energy. Some people want to lose weight. Some people want to add more muscle. We don't care what your questions are. Shoot your questions to us and we'll ask them here live on the show. So as always, today's our fourth show, and so far we've been blowing up with questions. If you submit us a question, be patient. We might not be able to get to your question the next show that we release. We're getting a ton of questions, you guys. We love your questions. We'll get to them as soon as we possibly can. Just be patient with us. If you have any questions, send us an email to JimAndJay@gsdmode.com. The email will be below inside the links, whether you're listening to this on iTunes, Stitcher, or watching on YouTube. So that being said, let's dive on in because we got a ton of great, badass questions for today. All right, so first question. I am only 18 years old, but I'm interested in improving my health and body composition as well as maximizing my potential lifespan. What advice would you give someone my age for accomplishing this? What should I watch out for as I get older? How would your advice change as I age?
So you go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
I'll take this one. I'm going to start with food. So you should be eating clean now. You should be developing your dietary habits. That would include whole foods, not processed foods. We're talking meat, vegetables, good carbohydrates, fruits, if you can, organic, clean eating, clean food. And that's going to last you your whole lifetime. You start now and develop the habit. You continue that throughout your whole life. That's going to just complement your goals of anti-aging and keeping your body together. Then I'd say you recommend to pick some type of activity that keeps you active. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. You don't have to be in a CrossFit. You could be a climber, a runner, just something that keeps you active, keeps your body moving, keeps you out of the comfort zone, some type of conditioning. It could be you're a water skier, whatever, but some type of activity that's, not prone to a lot of injury. And diet is everything, man. If you can start eating clean now and build that as your core and your fallback, your default eating, and keep that throughout your life, you're going to serve yourself in the anti-aging, keeping your body together, young looking, all that stuff for forever.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. Those are good points, Jim. The only thing I would add, again, it all comes down to your goals. When you're 18 years old, you're in your prime metabolically, you're in your prime hormonally, at least you should be. All the things that we regularly talk about on the show about getting your hormones checked, understanding your blood panels, you're not too young at that age. I mean, at 18, you probably don't have discretionary income. You maybe have a part-time job. It's likely you're either just about to leave home or still living at home. If you can spare, $250 or $280, get your blood work, go down the checked funnel, because it's never too early to understand your biochemistry. Secondarily, and maybe even more important, is you really need to understand your insulin sensitivity. We constantly harp on understanding your insulin sensitivity so you understand how well your body handles and processes carbohydrate eating. But it's never too young to understand that. Remember, there's 3 types of bodies. We talk about this all the time. So you might as well learn at 18. You're either ectomorphic, which is mean you're long and lean, which is mostly like me. You're naturally skinny. You're mesomorphic, which is like, a mutant genetic cartoon looking bodybuilder type, which means you're hypermuscular, you have low body fat, you look like that naturally. Or you're the worst genetic lot, which is endomorphic, right? Which means you're kind of fat. You're chunky, you're soft, you're kind of portly or round. So between those 3, most people fall in between those 3 types. So you're usually a combination of all of those 3. So once you understand what you are, you eat your carbohydrates around that. So if you're a naturally fat person, okay, you're 18 years old and you're fat and you don't want to be fat, well, guess what? You're going to have to live a life where you constrain or reduce your carb consumption. You can't eat as many carbs as Jim or Jay can, okay? So that might mean you can only eat 100 grams of carbs a day when you train with weights, and you can't even eat 50 grams of carbs a day when you don't train with weights. And these are rules you want to apply by your whole life. If your goal is to be lean, functionally strong, in good health, avoiding the diseases of aging. So I think that's probably most important. Everything else just comes based down to your goals. As Jim said, maybe you're a runner, or maybe you're a triathlete, or maybe you're a cross-country skier or an extreme sports athlete. Obviously your training and your performance is going to be designed around what you do. But if you're just an everyday bro, like really all 3 of us, Jim was a competitive bodybuilder at one time. I dabbled, Josh dabbled in bodybuilding. I did physique. I was a pro basketball player, but these are all past lives. So based on what you're doing now, that's how you live your life. If you want to be an everyday bro that has a 6-pack, or aspire to have a 6-pack, then, understanding your carbohydrate sensitivity and being functional and lean and having great health as you age, because this isn't about now at 18. This is about 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years from 18. So how do you live, long, healthy, and age gracefully? Well, you understand your insulin sensitivity so that you can regulate your carbohydrate intake around that as you age.
What's kind of cool is, Jay, as you talk about that, really you, Jim, and I are kind of those 3 body types.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
Like you've got the naturally thin dude that
yep.
you have to struggle to put on weight. Jim's the massive, bodybuilder that dude like looks at a weight and grows. And then I'm the fat guy that's worked my ass off to stay lean. So we're kind of there. We can all speak from experience. I love that. So speaking of that though, I know the last episode we hit really hard on supplements. So as an 18-year-old, is there any supplements, whether it's like a multivitamin, probiotic, certain, like, would you be like, hey dude, start this now, whether it's 1, 2, 3 supplements, and start taking to just, I know we've talked about, hey, every guy's going to have prostate issues or whatever it may be. Is there certain things they can start doing now to minimize that?
I'll take it, Jim, and then you can follow up. No, honestly, Jim already said it. If you're 18 years old, your body, regardless, again, of your insulin sensitivity or your body type, your somatotype, your body can handle regularly clean, hopefully organic if you can afford it, but just wholesome food. And that obviously means, lean protein, essential fatty acids, and hopefully clean, low glycemic carbohydrates. That's what you should be eating. You should be eating a lot of it. Again, it's all dependent on your goals. If you're 18 and you're like me, then you're trying to put mass on. I remember when I was 18, I didn't have a butt. Everybody used to make fun of me. My ass was flatter than a board. So I used to wear 2 pairs of, I had these fake shorts I would wear underneath over top my underwear. So I have a cushier butt. We all have those idiosyncrasies, but if you're 18 years old and you're naturally skinny, then you should be eating. And what does that mean? Well, chicken, beef, peanut butter, eggs, wholesome, clean proteins that, solid amino acids to build skeletal mass, which is muscle, and size to build a bigger, more impressive physique so you look better. I think one of the things that we don't talk about because it's bodybuilding and it's narcissism, but let's face it, and you know this, Josh, obviously you know this, Jim. In society, when you have an impressive physique and you're 19 or 20 years old, you're going to make a really good impression to somebody who's hiring you or potentially hiring you when you're on a job interview, right? Yeah. So the way you look and the way you carry yourself holds a lot of weight in the world that we live in today, whether that's good or bad, no judgment, but it means a lot. So if you're 18 and you desire to be impressive to whatever it is that you aspire to be impressive to, then build an awesome body, man.
I'll add to that. The only thing, when I was younger in my 1920, the only thing that I started to add was fish oils and healthy fats because I couldn't make them up enough in my diet. And then depending on, like your blood level, your vitamin D, a few things like that. But if you're eating the way that you should be eating, ideally, if you want to keep yourself young, you want to keep your body a high performance machine for the rest of your life, you're not going to have to take a lot of supplements. No. I mean, the only reason to really supplement at that age is if you're unable to eat something in your dietary. So if your omega-3 is very low, you might have to supplement with that. If you can't eat fermented foods for some reason and you don't get any probiotics, then you could supplement that. But for the most part, you should be eating raw, unprocessed foods in a balance with your insulin sensitivity in consideration, your activity level in consideration, your body goals in consideration of that, and supported by your diet. Supplement, should only be it's a supplement to your food. So I would concentrate on developing your dietary habits now, getting that all tuned in, and I'm doing that for the rest of your life, man.
Yep. So the kind of the second part of his question is, what should I watch for as I get older? Like, so you're 18, how often then? Because like all of us get checked every 90 days, but we're 30s, 40s, difference there, right? How often should he be getting checked, and what should he be watching for at that point?
He should get a full blood workup done every year. And just for the data points, just for the data points to have. And if there's something wrong, like his blood lipids are off, then I would make adjustments via his food, activity, possible nutritional supplementation, and then do a sooner check, maybe every 6 months until you start to see changes or to help dial that in. But at that age, just a full workup every year is fine.
And I say he, not knowing, it could be he or she. I don't really fully know. But and then what about, because we hear so much that like 99% of the diseases, when you talk about atherosclerosis and heart disease, are preventable. So like they have certain exams like the heart echocardiogram or whatever we will test the cholesterol in the heart. I mean, is that something we should be worried at 18, or is that later in life? I mean, at what point should we start looking at tests like that just to be preventative, to not have to worry about after the fact?
Typically, all those diseases, I mean, it's a genesis from vascular inflammation. And in that age, he or she shouldn't have vascular inflammation, or very low. If you're starting to eat the things that you should be eating at that age, you're getting your blood work done, you see that your lipids are in check, your fats are at the right intake, you should be in a low insulin or a controlled insulin environment, a low inflammation environment. I mean, that's what we're all after, right? That's what we reach consistently. And that's for vascular inflammation and overall aging of our cardiovascular systems. And so unless something got picked up on an exam or something strange or an anomaly on the blood work, I don't think that that's necessary, but you could certainly go get like a calcium score or, some measure of how much, or what type of shape your vascular system is in if you wanted to. I don't think it's necessary, but again, just the blood work will let you in, kind of give you a generalized overview of what's going on in your body.
And would that be assuming that they're 18 and then they're in good shape? Because we see fifth graders now developing type 2 diabetes with atherosclerosis. So what happens if you are an overweight or obese 18-year-old?
So Josh, that's a great point. Hold on, Jim. That's a great point. I was going to say that before you said that. We're seeing now a massive, let's say massive, because we know it is massive. I mean, most people don't want to admit it. It's kind of like the TRT epidemic where we have like an estrogen dominant male populace right now. So if you're an 18-year-old dude and you've got a lot of adipose, fat tissue, you've got estrogen dominance, you've got the whole pear-shaped body, you already have man boobs, you've got all these issues going on. Well, then, it's not out of the realm of possibility to have a legitimate physician look at you for these kind of things. I just this morning personally had a life insurance evaluation to increase my life insurance, and they came in and they ran an EKG and they took blood and they did some urine samples and some other stuff. But again, I'm 45 years old, so your question is really relevant. I think unfortunate answer though, Josh, is that medicine is not caught up to where we are and what we're doing from a preventative measure standpoint, because unfortunately today medicine is still about triaging and standard patient care. And standard patient care and triaging today, especially for life insurance actuary tables, is based on, what is this person likely to have or possess right now from a disease standpoint. They're not looking into life extension or anti-aging, how to prevent these things. They're looking into like, what are the risk factors at their age? So the sad part is that 18-year-old kid is really kind of, up shit creek without a paddle. There's really not a lot of ways that he can, he or she at 18 years old can have a doctor, do the stuff that Jim was talking about, which is, do sclerotic testing. There's a lot of things to do to check their vascular networks and stuff like that, but they're not going to do it because of their age. And it's an expensive test anyway. And they're just going to say, well, they're not a high risk candidate, or they're not in that quadrant of, based on age of where people should be looked at for this kind of stuff. So it kind of sucks. So for an 18-year-old, they really have to do their due diligence. They have to watch shows like ours. They have to do their own research on the internet. They need to buy books. Brett's book, Get Serious, is a great book. Dr. Brett Osborne. Obviously, the TRT manual gives stuff. We're going to always be on the cutting edge and give recommendations. But your question really is great because it's unfortunate. But, there's not a lot of stuff that an 18-year-old can do from an anti-aging standpoint. As we talk about this with TRT. If an 18 to 20-year-old comes in and he's got low testosterone, the average doc won't even treat for it.
Yeah.
So it's a tough situation. If you're that guy and you are estrogen dominant or you are high body fat, then you got to do your due diligence, man. Obviously we work with doctors now that we can send them down the funnel and they can get checked and they can look at these things, but you got to be really progressive and you got to be aggressive yourself and say, I really need to see this kind of stuff because I feel like I'm at high risk.
Yeah, one of the only thing I was going to add, if you do a comprehensive metabolic panel and everything like a full workup from Check, you're going to get your blood glucose and you're going to get your A1C done, and those are indicators, how you're doing on a diabetic scale or if you're pre-diabetic. And so that's a pretty comprehensive check just to catch, red flags. To answer your question specifically about diabetes or pre-diabetes, that should show up, and that's one of those things that if it's high, it's a red flag, then it'll require further testing and investigation to see what's going on, and then you deal with it.
Yep. Love it, man. All right. Yeah, it's so sad, and I know you talked about this just a minute ago, but insurance companies will cover a $40,000 heart stent, but they won't cover a $300 test to see how much calcium builds in your heart. So much of this is preventable, and that's why we've got to take it amongst ourselves to get checked and do the things that we do. So, okay, so what are your signs, or what are the signs that your body is burning fat? If you are hungry, is that a sign? True hunger, not bored, not just that you're bored, right? Which we all experience that. Any physical signs other than body changes, measurements, etc.
You want to answer that, Jim?
Go ahead, Jay. Start.
So Josh, I'm sorry. Say the question real quick again because I was trying to mute.
Yeah, I know we had a dog barking.
Yeah.
So good, man. So what are the signs that your body's burning fat, right?
Because okay, I got you.
Then they go into, hey, I'm bored and I feel like I need to eat. Like, is it like boredom, hunger pains?
Yeah, so it's actually I'll jump in there and answer it.
And measurements.
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, it's one that Jim and I get all the time, and we've honestly been getting it for literally 2 decades. And Jim probably has the best answer, and I'll let him finish. I'll just kind of share, my insights. But you're burning fat when you're actually hungry. So if you're in a caloric deficit, okay, hopefully you're doing a structured diet, you're working with somebody like Jim or I, or you're listening to our show or whatever, and you figured out, you've gone down the path of setting up a caloric, or, a concise caloric deficit, and obviously you're doing weight training and hopefully cardiovascular training. When you're doing that and you're at a certain, maintenance caloric level a day, and now you're at say 20%, or maybe you're even super, super dialed in your 25% deficit, at some point in the day, you're going to be hungry. You're going to feel stomach pain, or not pain, but those pangs of like, oh, wow, I'm hungry. My body needs to eat. And so the psychological barrier of you resisting your body or resisting the urge to go and feed yourself is really the make or break it tool to lose body fat, to get leaner, to get, a more lean condition or physical, a functionally strong and lean look. So It's hard. I wish I could say it was easy because it's not. I mean, there is no, shortcut or magic trick, but when you're hungry is actually when you know that your body is starting to burn its fat reserves or its adipose tissue or its free fatty acids and glycerol as fuel. Okay. Now, obviously we talk about fasting. We talk about ketogenic dieting. We talk about that kind of stuff on the show. So if you were thinking of it in those terms, if you were doing intermittent fasting or you were maybe doing like a super low carb, partially ketogenic or, modulated or cyclical ketogenic diet or something like that, you would be talking about the times when your body is super low on insulin, as Jim says, like living an insulin-controlled lifestyle from no carbs. So let's say you've gone 15 hours, you're doing intermittent fasting and you've had no food at all. And you literally, combined with your overnight fast or whatever, you're at 16 or 17 hours of no food, no calories at all. All you've done is drink water and caffeine. You'll start feeling it. You're really going to be like, wow, I feel low on energy. My brain may be getting a little foggy. You're irritable, whatever. But that's when your body is starting to tap in to its fat stores to burn for fuel. And that's how you know that it's working. You want to add to that, Jim?
Yeah, I just, in all my years of dieting, some of that to the extreme measures and everyone that I've ever helped, I've never myself or had reported in from a client to say, hey, I'm losing all this body fat and I feel great.
Yeah.
I'm satiated all day. I ate my meals and I'm not really that hungry. Everything's awesome. It just doesn't happen, man, because, you're making a drastic change to your body. Your body does not want to give up body fat. Your body does not want to put on muscle. And to make those changes, it costs. And it costs effort. And sometimes it costs a little hurt feelings, and sometimes going to bed hungry. I mean, that's what you have to do. But overall, yes, being hungry after you eat a meal or being hungry at the 3-hour mark when you're ready for your next meal, that is a good indication that your metabolism is sped up and you're in that kind of environment that is conducive to body fat loss. You're going to have to create a calorie deficit. That's going to cause hunger almost all the time. And it's a good measure. It's a rough measure of you're going to lose body fat.
Yeah. Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, I kind of understand the second part of that question though, of like, cause sometimes we get hungry out of boredom. Yeah. Like, dude, if I'm grinding all day at the office, like I can get, like I'll be hungry, like, but I'll go 8 hours and be like, shit, I forgot to eat. Now I'm hungry.
Right.
But then if I'm at home on a Saturday, like I'm like, shit, I'm hungry every 30 minutes. So sometimes the hunger can kind of screw with us mentally, correct?
It's a great point.
Is there a way to gauge it outside of just feeling hungry because our minds are just screwing with us all day long?
So the best way to deal with that is being on a structured diet. And know that you're going to eat, say, 2,000 calories today, and I'm going to eat it with probably 4 to 5 meals, and that's it.
Right.
We all sit at home at night, and it's worse at night, right? Because you sit at home at night, maybe you're watching TV, maybe you're working, you're at home, the kids are throwing cereal all over you, whatever the case may be. But yeah, it's hard not to snack at night. But that, to me, that's a different hunger. I can tell the difference between that.
Right.
When I'm hungry and I'm losing body fat and I'm waiting for the next hour to roll by to where I can eat my last meal, that's almost like a primal hunger. And I can personally tell the difference. Maybe it's because I've dealt with it so much in my life, but that's a different hunger than, hey, I'm on the couch. Oh man, I really want to get up and get some chips. That's a different, it's like it's not as primal of a feeling of hunger.
So let me follow just up with this one quick question before you jump in, Jay, because I know you want to add something on. What is that? Because we hear these different things. Oh, we eat every 2 hours, eat every 3 hours. You talk about 4 or 5 meals spread out. Let's say they're getting the right amount of proteins and carbs. Is there like a gap that they should wait? Like, hey, dude, if you just ate 30 grams of protein, like you should not, no matter any circumstance, eat for 3 more hours. Or like, is there a time frame that you kind of go by?
No.
I'm a little bit more flexible with that. I mean, the only times that I really recommend that you eat in a certain amount of time or a certain time period is around training. So I might eat 3 times, pre, intra, and post workout, and then I'll have a secondary meal post workout. And then after that, typically I'll spread them out. Or if you're doing like a metabolic blowtorch diet, or in incorporating some intermittent fasting, then that's going to change too. You're going to go maybe 16 hours without eating. And so it really depends on what schedule you're on. But typically, if you're on a normal scheduled diet, you're doing like 2,000 calories a day and you're doing it within 5 meals, yeah, you're going to have a natural frequency that you spread that out. You're going to do one pre, one post, and then maybe 3 throughout the day at certain intervals. But the longer you do that and the leaner you get and the more extreme condition you get in, your body, you will know exactly to the minute when it's time to eat.
Yeah.
Very regimented. And that's the time where you're really making changes. So
let me just add to what Jim said. That was really well said. And I always defer to him because Jim is my mentor when it comes to all this. But I really do seriously, I want to have a J. Campbell moment right now. There are so many people in the bodybuilding and fitness industry who are fucking brainwashed about time intervals of eating, of every 3 hours. I got a meal plan, the 6-pack bags. It's a bunch of fucking nonsense. All bullshit sold by the supplement muscle comic companies and their buddies that own the goddamn supplement businesses that they all finance each other. There's no data. There's nothing that supports this. You've got to have a constant supply of amino acids and clean burning carbohydrates every 3.5 hours. It's bullshit. Dr. Scott Connolly, who founded Metrics, brilliant guy, probably worth a couple $100 million at this point. He wrote a book called Perfect RX that we all read a long time ago. It came out right after Dr. Barry Sears' book, The Zone Diet, which is a phenomenal book. For all of you people that have never read the book, The Zone Diet, I still highly recommend it because it's brilliant. It has biochemistry broken down to a 4th grade level. You can understand about fat burning and eicosanoids and all these different things. But the truth is, Scott Connolly bullshitted everybody. He had no data and no research, but he had metrics, and he told everybody that you needed to have metrics because it was a perfect blend of fat and protein every 3.5 hours. So get your meal comp out, get your little, chart in your spreadsheet and figure out your daily caloric goals every 3.5 hours that you eat or every 3 hours that you eat. And then of course, as you know, Josh, the whole industry blew up and 6-pack bags and Scott Samuel and all these people that got involved in it glommed onto it and started selling everybody a bill of goods. With all that said, Jim's right. If your caloric goal is X, then you got to eat your caloric goal on a daily basis. If it's a deficit of 20%, then that's what you eat. Now, does it matter? Seriously? If you fast 16 or 17 or 18 hours a day and you eat all that food in a 4-hour window, absolutely not. However, the only caveat is if you're training that day, then I do agree with Jim that post or pre, there are times where the body is more responsive to absorbing carbohydrates as muscle glycogen repletion, and of course proteins and amino acids to replenish the pool from training or degradation from training. So yeah, you can take them around those times. There is a viable, window of opportunity, so to speak, to eat them then. But this nonsense of you have to eat every 3 hours all day long to sustain a muscle building or fat burning or maintenance or any of that, it's complete nonsense. And it is amazing how many bright fit bros and gals I see on Facebook who continually brainwash the masses with that idea. And it's complete nonsense. Show me a single data point that says you have to have eat a meal every 3 or 3.5 hours. It's not true. The body, remember Josh, we talked about this before. The older you get, the more neurologically efficient your muscles become and your central nervous system adaptations. So when you're 40 and you've been training for 2 decades, your body is not going to scavenge and break down amino acids at the first sign of no food. It just doesn't do that. It's biochemically ineffective and almost impossible for that to happen. They have studies of men and women who have starved for literally a week, okay? And the loss of skeletal mass is so minuscule that it's nonsense. The body is super smart and super adaptable, and it will do everything in its possible or anything possible to maintain muscle and preserve mass before it catabolizes muscle tissue. It'll break down fat and glucose and turn it into protein in the process of gluconeogenesis before it starts burning muscle tissue and actually catabolizing skeletal muscle and amino acids. So it's not going to happen. If you want to fast, just make sure you maintain your caloric maintenance or your balance or whatever the number is during the course of the day. You can do that.
Yeah, I think what happens is, we become conditioned as a society to not ask why, to not be skeptics, right?
Follow the herd.
We were born like perfect. We ask why all the time. Our parents start telling us stop asking why, and we stop. So we hear all this stuff. I was that same way for years. Oh, dude, you eat every 2 to 3 hours, X amount of this and that. Which obviously is not
all of us were
anymore. But let me ask you guys this, because like today, like I am probably right now on maybe 30 grams of carbs today. Today I'm going to train when we get done with the show. I got to train later this afternoon. So I'm going to have a carb meal here in a little bit right before I go train. But I don't feel hungry. I feel great. But I've had high protein meals every few hours, like literally beef, a whey protein shake, a couple meals of beef, but I don't feel hungry. Right. Like, is it okay to eat every 2 to 3 hours if it's a high protein meal, no carbs to satisfy that hunger, or would you recommend against that?
Dude, you could eat every 15 minutes, again, as long as you're maintaining whatever that balance, that caloric level relative to your goal. So if it's a deficit, you're eating 1,750 calories a day because you want to get to 7%, well, then it stays within those lines. It doesn't really matter the frequency. And Jim, jump in here and explain what I'm about to say. But the only thing you have to worry about when you eat more often is, shunting or blunting insulin. Okay, because again, the more you eat, even when there is no carbs, even if it's protein, even if it's fat or a combination of both, there's still a transient spike of insulin. So the more often you eat, the more likely you're going to have that insulin response, and the harder it becomes to block it if the insulin starts becoming like, okay, I got to release insulin every 20 or 30 minutes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that we always again circle back to is called insulin controlled lifestyle. And so if your diet is set up where you want to maintain or gain muscle and lose or not gain body fat, you're gonna control your insulin levels. And the way that you're doing it now is just to that point, Josh. So you've eaten pretty much fat and protein for all day. So you've had minimal insulin exposure. You could eat every 20 minutes and you're still going to be relatively in a low insulin environment all day. Now, if you're eating carbohydrates, say your calories for the day were 2,000 and your ratios were 40, 30, 30, and you were eating a percentage of carbohydrates with each of those meals and you were getting a semi-significant insulin event each time that you ate, yeah, man, that's not optimal. That's not optimal on a few different planes, right? So for vascular inflammation, that's not optimal. For insulin sensitivity, that's not optimal. To maintain a fat burning mode throughout the day, that's not optimal. So you can kind of break it down. Again, that's why we always circle back to you're going to eat your carbohydrates. The majority of your carbohydrates are going to be pre and post training. After that, it's going to be trace only from vegetables. And so, it's a loaded question. Yes, it does matter how many times you eat a day, but it's more important to control the insulin exposure of that.
So Josh, let me add something in to like confuse people more, because what Jim just brought up, what Jim brought up is an awesome point. So if you were one of those people, and let's say you're not one of us, you're a woman, you're a GSD mode watcher, listener, you're in the group, you're a realtor, you have no earthly aspirations of having a six-pack or being 12% body fat, which is super lean for a woman, Monica Diaz style, and you just want to cut back some body fat and have more energy, you have to be very conscious of your insulin. Because if you're one of those people, again, let's say you're just a typical, 25% to 30% woman, you don't look fat in clothes, but you're somewhat skinny fat, you don't have muscle. If you eat a small meal 4 or 5 times a day and that meal consists of a piece of fruit, well, that's not going to help you, because every time you eat that fruit, your body becomes enslaved to that quote unquote insulin event that you just started in your body. So it does become super, super confusing for most people around nutrition, especially when their caloric intake is less, right? Because that woman eating little small meals, but washing it down with a strawberry or half a banana or whatever, or a piece of watermelon every time she eats, even though it's low calories, it's still screwing her insulin up. So it's still stimulating her body to say, oh my God, give me more food or give me another insulin flush. And so how do you get that insulin flush? You probably cheat. You probably snack on a candy bar or something that is going to not be conducive to you maintaining your weight and getting leaner. So I'm bringing that up because it can get confusing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. But you know, I also think that people need to understand too, and maybe I'm totally wrong. You guys can call me out if I'm totally wrong here. That dude, if you want to lose body fat, like I'm trying to get down to 7% right now. I've lost just about 2% body fat in the last 2 weeks.
Awesome.
But I'm not hungry. Like I'm not hungry all day long.
Right.
Yeah, I've controlled my carbohydrates. I'm well under 150 grams a day. Most days like 100 grams. But I'm still eating a good, decent amount of protein every few hours. Where, dude, I'm not hungry ever, right? I'm not starving myself, but I'm still losing that body fat. But I'm making sure the different caloric intake. I'm really minimizing my carbohydrates, making sure I'm taking enough protein. So you don't have to necessarily starve your ass off to lose weight and get the body that you want. Correct? Or am I
Exactly.
totally?
You're 100% right.
How much caffeine are you taking in, Josh?
I drink a cup in the morning and I have a cold brew. It's probably 100,000 or 1,000 milligrams.
Well, caffeine will help suppress your appetite a little bit. Not having insulin spikes like you're doing throughout the days is going to help control your appetite. So anytime that you have an insulin event, you're going to have hunger to follow it. That's just the way it works. And so I don't know if typically after you train, you have that carbohydrates, you train, you're kind of hungry for that second meal. Sometimes after that second meal, it's a little hard to shut it back down for me. Because
I always want chips and salsa after I train.
Right.
It's really hard, dude.
So
I ate a lot of that in
combo. Hunger is determined by a couple things, right? And insulin is a major factor in hunger. There's some things to suppress it, like the absence of insulin and caffeine. Those help too. Fat and protein help suppress. You get less of an insulin response. You get less hunger out of it. And so those are all tricks, and those are all the reasons why we recommend carbohydrates around training, and then shut it down for the rest of the day.
Josh, the reason you're not hungry is because you're not having any insulin events. Your insulin is mostly going to be pre and post training, and you're following that to a T. And yeah, maybe the caffeine, blunts a little bit of stuff, and you feel, there's a natural diuresis effect of that and stuff too. But the reality is like going back to that woman. If you're fat, if you're 30%, 25% or higher body fat, and you're doing what we're trying to, instruct you to do, you're trying to tone up and tighten up and lose fat, and you're naturally fat, you're endomorphic, you're insulin sensitive or insensitive, then you shouldn't be eating fruit. There should be no fruit, because anytime you eat a piece of fruit, you're having an insulin event. Okay? So for someone who's naturally fat, has a lot of fat to lose, or both, you should not be eating foods that are going to create insulin events unless it's like Jim says, it's pre or post workout. I mean, that should just be rule of thumb, like number one order of life.
Well, we can make it a little bit more simple too, right? I mean, what are we all after? Basically, we're all after the physique or the body where we take our shirt off and we go out to the pool or the beach or whatever, and we feel semi-comfortable, right? I mean, that's what we're all after. Same with a woman. I mean, you want to put on a bathing suit and not feel like a pig and walk out and have a decent time at the pool or whatever. That's what essentially we're after.
Exactly.
And so in order to do that, if you're not in that condition, you shouldn't be eating carbs.
Right.
Unless you need them. You need them for performance or you need it for the workout. After that, you shouldn't be eating them. That's a period. I mean, simple as that.
And it goes back, if you're confused and you're watching the show, Josh posted the article, Carbs You Should Eat, in the last, in V3 and our last thing. That is a primer for every human being on the planet. If you're confused about nutrition, which again, most people are, I literally, Monica and I spent a good day. We broke down every single carbohydrate source. The title of the article is Carbs You Should Eat. And it's like this, here's okay, here's okay, and here's okay. And everything else, if it's not here, don't eat it. And it's that simple. It's exactly what Jim says. I mean, there's only select carbs you should be consuming if your goal is fat loss. And again, if you're endomorphic, you're insulin insensitive, then you shouldn't be eating carbs hardly ever unless it's before a workout or after. Rule of thumb.
Yeah. And those of you that are watching or listening to this, I mean, that's me. I'm that guy. Like I get up at 3 a.m., I train early, but I don't have any carbs after 9 a.m.
Right.
Like the rest is because I'm that guy. Like my wife, who's 110 pounds.
Yep.
If I ate her diet, I'd blow up to 230.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
So
Same way with Monica. Same way with Monica. If I ate like Monica did, I wouldn't be the guy that I am now. There's no doubt.
Yep, love it. So, all right. So, okay. So the next question is from a dude that's 171 pounds. He's 42 years old, 5'9". He said he did a body fat test at 10.1%. What are your thoughts to look better? Should I gain some muscle? What percentage of body fat's acceptable to put on or trying to gain that amount of muscle? Which I know is kind of tough because we don't know what his goals are. But let's say I'm assuming he wants to aesthetically look better, a little bit more muscular, a little bit leaner. What should he be doing?
So let me tackle that, Jim, and you finish. So first off, if you're at 10% body fat, man, you're to be commended. Bravo. Golf clap. Very few people get to that level of body fat in life, okay? So if you're at 10%, you're especially at middle age, 40-year-old dude, then props to you, man. Celebrate your greatness. Be happy because that's a great feat, number one. Number two, as Josh said, it depends on what your goals are. I find that most guys, and I know Jim's going to agree with me on this, most guys who are at 10% or around 9 to 11% body fat guys who complain and say, I don't look good enough. Well, guess what? You don't work your abs, okay? How many guys do we see in the gym today who, have the classic, like big arms, good shoulders, good chest, and their abs are completely undeveloped because they never work them? So if you're seriously a 10% body fat guy, guess what, dude? 90% of your battle, 85% of your battle's won if all you are wanting to look is better, as Jim said, with your shirt off at the beach or playing in a pickup basketball game or a recreation game at the weekend or whatever. Then you got to start working your abs harder. So it comes down to like what Jim does and I do when we work with like advanced trainees and people that are already at an elite level. We look at their weak spots. We look at the areas on their body which are underdeveloped or lack of development, and we say, okay, guess what? We got to go after this spot. You're not doing a good job training this spot. For whatever reason, no judgment. It's time to go after specificity. So for guys at 10%, and again, we don't know what this guy's goals are, but if his goal is like he doesn't feel comfortable, I'm at 10% on the DEXA or the anthropomorphic measurements of the 7 or 11 site measurement with the calipers, but I don't feel comfortable. Well, guess what? That's probably because you haven't worked your abs. You probably don't have good abdominal development. There's no, ripples or muscular, pronounced muscle, or abdominal walls. So the reality is you just got to work your abs harder. Or you got to maybe work your abs because some guys don't even work their abs at all. So again, it just comes down to your goals. But if you're at 10%, Jim will tell you, this, Josh, because you're doing it right now. I mean, it's a game under 10%, okay? It's a challenge, and most people don't even want to live that lifestyle to get down to 6 or 5 or 7% because that's when, when you're sub 10 or right at 10 and that's where you're going. We just lost him. We're still recording. All right, well, we lost Josh. But when you're right at that level, that's when the game gets intense. Like, that's when you're like, wait a minute. I have to really dial everything in. I got to change everything about my approach if I want to get to that level. So the reality is if you're at 10%, you're pretty awesome. You should have abs. If you don't have abs, it's because you're not training them probably, or you don't have the great genetics that show your abs, but you can bring your abs up. So it just really becomes at that point, what is your ultimate goal? If you're competing, if you want to do a photo shoot, something like that, well then, yeah, you got to get dialed further and you got to get down to 6 or 7% because that's where everybody's at. And that's where you're going to look good or stand out or at least, look commensurate with the audience. That just comes down to your goal.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I mean, it's hard to say, what you would do because I don't know what your body looks like and I don't know what your goals are. But the fact that you're at 10% and you're 40 years old, like Jay said, I mean, that just shows that you're either incredibly genetically gifted or you've actually put some effort into and you've been diligent with your diet and intelligent about that. So if you're at the point where you're at 10% and you want to gain body or, you want to put on muscle mass, then that would come down to a function of your training, and then you're going to have be in a slight caloric surplus. So it's a loaded question. There's a lot of variables in there, but just the fact that you're at 10% body fat indicates to me that you know a little bit about diet, you know a little bit about your body, and so then adding or subtracting muscle in certain parts of your body or physique sculpting just comes down to seeing what you look like and then changing your workout routine.
Right. Josh, are you back?
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, just typical internet just dropped down. So we both of us answered it. We just said, at 10%, you're in great shape. what is your goal? I think that, the summary or the high level summary is like, if you really at 10% want better, then you either, have to specifically attack a specific area that's not looking or commensurate with what you expect it to be. Or if you're wanting to compete or do a photo shoot and you do got to go down to 6 or 7%, then obviously you got to dial your game in further, and you got to work with, if you're not working with somebody like Jim or I, or somebody at a high level who can get you down there and not, you're not going to blow your brains out and go completely insane trying to do it, because as you know, it's a tougher game once you get down to single digits.
Cool, man. And you're recording too, right, Jim?
Yeah. Nothing got
lost. Yeah, then. Okay, so awesome. Wow. Yeah, badass, guys. Okay, so the next question is something that we've really been asked on every single show. So I figure we might as well take this opportunity to go a little bit deeper than we have in the past. What are the benefits of metformin when it comes to anti-aging and dieting?
Go ahead, Jim. You can start.
I'm just going to keep it simple, man. It's insulin exposure leading to vascular inflammation and increased activity or increased lipolysis because you're in a low glucose environment. And so if you take metformin, it will build up in your liver and it will inhibit your liver's ability to produce glucose to your bloodstream. So again, let's just go over, in your bloodstream, there's chemoreceptors that tell your body how much glucose there is circulating in your bloodstream. When it drops below a certain level, it tells your liver to activate and release glucose to bring it back up. When it brings it back up, typically it overshoots a little bit and you get an increase of insulin, or you intake carbohydrates and you get glucose released in your bloodstream from your digestive system. Then your insulin gets released and brings it back down to a normal level of glucose in your bloodstream. That insulin will take the glucose out of your bloodstream and either store it as glycogen in fat cells or take it into cells for metabolic activity like muscle and all that stuff. So the main thing that we like about metformin is it inhibits your glucose from making and producing glucose to release in your bloodstream. So during a fasted state, so you go, say you stop eating at 8 o'clock at night and you sleep till 6 or whatever, you get up and you eat at 8. So if you're doing a 12-hour fast, during that 12-hour fasted window, you're going to have less glucose in your bloodstream. You're going to have much less insulin, and your body's going to be more likely to be in an environment to burn fat throughout that whole fasted period.
Right.
And if you're doing something like our metabolic blowtorch diet plan, where you're doing something like a fasted cardio on metformin, then it makes that cardio even more effective of getting into the fat stores. And so that all ties in with less insulin exposure over your lifetime, less vascular inflammation, less vascular damage, and it keeps you insulin sensitive,
right,
not sensitive.
Yes.
Second thing that metformin will do, besides making more sensitive to insulin, if you take it with carbohydrates, it'll block some of the digestion of it. We don't use it that way because when we eat carbohydrates, we eat it for a purpose. We eat it pre and post training. That way, that's why we separate our metformin dosages from carbohydrate intake. But overall message, we don't have to get into the biochemistry of it. Overall message is less insulin response, or less insulin secreted in your vascular system, less vascular inflammation, and it'll keep you more sensitive to insulin.
So let me jump in. I'm going to share the screen real quick because it's a very hot topic. There's an article right now in it was from Science Magazine, but it's reprinted, I think, in the Star Minneapolis Tribune in Minneapolis. It's called The Search. Let me share the screen. It's The Search for Longevity, and it's literally right now the best article that I've ever seen actually about metformin. Scientists seeking to slow the aging process are focusing on a diabetes drug that has shown some promising signs in the lab. The whole article goes on. It's so deep. I'm going to put it on Facebook eventually. But it talks about what metformin is doing, which was Josh's original question, from an anti-aging standpoint. And guys, this medication, I hate saying it's a medication because it's almost a supplement, but it is a medication. It's a diabetes medication. As Jim said, all those great things about it. It suppresses blood sugar. So for diabetics who've been eating like shit and have insulin events all the time, it blocks or shunts the overproduction of insulin. But for guys like us, or for people using it for anti-aging, it does so many things at a cellular level and in the brain. Again, it's anti-sclerotic. It's neuroprotective. It literally goes into the brain, the neurotransmitter pathways, and it cleans all of your neurons and all of the networks that are in your brain that allow your brain to function at peak efficiency. Beyond that, it does stuff. It it breaks down tumor formation. It actually is anti-cancerous. It's anti-tumor. I mean, it does so many things at a cellular level that it's just unbelievable. So I'm going to unshare the screen now, but it's just, there's really nothing like it. They're finally starting to come around to the standpoint now where it looks like a company, I don't know if you just saw this, Jim, but it looks like somebody's actually going to fund the research for it. So God bless them, whoever's decided to do that, because we always thought that it wouldn't happen because, the pharmaceutical companies don't benefit off of metformin, right? Because it's cheap. There's no patent on it. It's multiple generic versions. I mean, when Jim and I were down in Mexico, we were in one of the pharmacies. There's like 20 goddamn suppliers in Mexico, different generics of the product. So, it's a medication that every person on the planet, regardless of whether they're pre-diabetic, diabetic, or just natural like us, normal people, should be using for its many, many benefits. Now, again, science has not caught up to the benefit or caught up to it because, again, medicine especially is in the whole problem, solution, reaction world, and it's all about how do we treat disease and how do we treat the symptoms of disease instead of like how do we prevent disease from happening. So at some point, and obviously all three of us are focused on making this a part of our lives and making this a part of the world. We're focused on changing the game, so to speak, and really improving the personal healthcare space. This is one of the pillars or one of the leading components. Like metformin is part of changing your aging game, changing the way your body handles vascular inflammation and damage from living, okay? And as Jim says, it's all about vascular disease prevention. It's all about limiting inflammation. As Dr. Brett Osborne calls it, he calls it inflammaging. So inflammation along with aging leads to the various diseases of aging, of death, right? Every disease, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, glaucoma, even dementia and Alzheimer's. They now call type 3 diabetes dementia and Alzheimer's. So again, we now know that all of the diseases that people essentially die from are due to inflammation produced by an overproduction of insulin, usually from a shitty diet and lifestyle of overconsuming carbohydrates, drinking too much alcohol, and not building muscle or doing cardiovascular exercise, which creates or improves insulin sensitivity. So it's very simple to see that the first step in changing the game for yourself and taking control of your personalized healthcare, besides getting evaluated, with blood work and stuff through Checked, is to use metformin. Now, sadly, as you know, Josh, there aren't even that many doctors in the world right now that even prescribe it for this purpose. Now, thankfully, there is the Anti-Aging, the Life Extension Institute, the LEF people. They are big proponents of metformin. They have been for decades. But it's hard if you're not in that group to actually find a doctor out there today who will write you a script for metformin for anti-aging. You can't even, from a life insurance standpoint, you can't even tell people you're using metformin. It should be that you should, because that should actually give you a preferred status, but they actually will just immediately label you in with a diabetic.
Yeah.
So it's just, the system is backwards right now. But we're getting to a point where metformin eventually will be established and will be, in my opinion, the de facto standard for personal health care and optimization. And as Jim said, living an insulin-controlled lifestyle, like they go hand in hand.
Yeah. So, the question that I've gotten when it comes to metformin is because we see all these fads out there. People are like, okay, like all this is cool, but is it another fad? Now we know that metformin's been around for 50 years. I mean,
100. It's been around 100 years.
Say to that person that's like, oh, dude, this is just another damn fad. I mean, how long's it been around? What type of testing have you done to really proven these things?
In the underground community, bodybuilding and otherwise, in performance, it's been around at least 20 years since the internet started. And those are guys, we're talking elite athletes with elite world-class coaching, bodybuilders that have been on the cutting edge. It's been around for a long time. It's just kind of been in the shadows. It's been undercover. It's not one of those things that, was kind of public knowledge and out there. Recently, of course, there's been somebody wrote an article on it, and that's what started it. The studies being funded, so on and so forth. Everybody picked it up and started writing about it. But it's been around for a long time. It's been in the shadows kind of as a gray market for use of people that aren't diabetics.
can it be abused? Like, I know each of us take like a gram a day. Say, my wife takes like 500 milligrams a day. Can it be? Could you take it to the extreme? Like with anything? I mean, is it something that you should also watch out for because it can be abused?
Yeah, I think, don't hold me to this, but I think the data suggests that 4 grams a day is the higher end dosage. But there's no reason to take that much. If you're taking 1 to 2 grams a day, I'm a larger guy, so I take 2 grams. I'm very certain that my liver is being inhibited from producing glucose, and that's what we're after.
Right.
And it builds up in your liver and does that. You don't have to have I don't think that you have to even maintain a high dosage of that. I think that if you're a normal guy under 200 pounds or maybe right around 200 pounds, a gram is fine. Probably 500 to 750 milligrams is more than enough. But average dosage is going to be about a gram for a day. And I think that's been it's been shown to be safe. Even in a sick population of diabetics, it's been a very safe medication all throughout the term of usage.
But I don't want you guys to think like you can't just take metformin and then go out there and eat a bunch of sugars and a bunch of carbs and think it's going to be the wonder drug, right?
No. Now, unfortunately, that's what the sad, pathetic medical industry does.
Well, everybody's looking for the magic pill, dude.
Absolutely. And you know that. But that's the saddest part is that.
Let's look at it and for the population that it's prescribed for, right? So I'm just going to run you through a hypothetical situation, and this is what the data supports, and this is what the body of data that we have, right? Is the average adult person that comes in and they have adult onset diabetes, which means their body's been slammed by an abundance of insulin for many, many years. And they're at the point where that insulin isn't very effective anymore. So the doctor, being precautious, isn't going to start them out on insulin. He'll start them out on metformin, knowing that that person's going to be on insulin soon. And that person won't adjust their diet or lifestyle. They're just going to take a couple pills of metformin with their carbohydrate meals as recommended by the doctor, because it's going to inhibit some of the carbohydrates they're eating. Then it's also going to build up in their liver and help support a lower insulin activity to increase insulin sensitivity. But that's that's a therapy that's going to fail. So it'll work initially, and it's going to slow down the progression of diabetes. But eventually that patient, without changing his diet or lifestyle, just adding the metformin, will be on exogenous insulin soon. And that's universal. That's what happens.
Absolutely true.
That's the pathway of that diabetic patient. So you have the patient that comes in and says, oh my God, I'm a pre-diabetic. My doctor's going to give me this medication. What should I do? Should I exercise? Could I change my diet?
Right.
Some of those people do that. Some, they start walking, they start exercising, they start reading the diabetic journals and go, oh man, okay, shit, I can't eat sugar all day long. What should I eat? Okay, I'll try this, I'll try that, I'll change my diet. Those people will ward off, a lot of times, they will ward off adult onset diabetes. And unless they're so far gone, those won't be patients that'll be on exogenous insulin. And so, to your point, Josh, if you just take the pill and go, hey, I can do whatever I want, it's going to slow you down for a little bit, but it's not going to, you're still headed in that direction.
Well, let me add something to what you're saying, okay? And this is a horrible reflection of the medical industry, but we both know this is true, and Josh knows this is true too because he's dealing with his own mom. The doctors that handle diabetes are, for the most part, fucking quacks. They don't know the first thing about nutrition or metabolism. I see doctors who treat 30 and 40-year patients with metformin, literally been diabetic since they were 18 or 20. And obviously it runs in, how many times you hear them? Oh, it runs in my family. No, ignorance runs in your fucking family. Your doctor is a moron. He tells you to eat fruit. You're diabetic and they have you eating fruit. What the fuck is going on with this picture? Okay? But I see it all the time. And again, if you're a doctor and you're watching the show, I'm not slandering you. But if you're a doctor and you're watching the show and you're giving your fucking diabetic patients fruit, then I'm slandering you. Okay? Get correct. Figure it out. But that's the problem. There's too many doctors that truly do not understand nutrition. They do not understand the metabolic pathways. They do not understand controlling and suppressing insulin. And they don't cure the biggest issue, which is the diet. They give them metformin. They say take a gram in the morning, a gram in the middle of the day, a gram at night, and keep eating like a fucking glutton fat person. And then nothing gets fixed. And that Jim says, then they become dependent and they're all of a sudden injecting insulin to their bodies. But the truth is if they understood nutrition better or at least cared or gave a rat's ass, none of this would be a problem because they could use metformin and clean up their diet and they wouldn't have to go down that pathway.
Now I'm going to defend the physicians for a moment here, because a lot of times when the patients come in,
I know,
and you get 20 minutes with them, you're not going to change their mind on what they're going to eat.
I know,
it's not going to happen.
I know.
If you tell those people, hey, you're going to have open heart surgery now in 5 years, or you're going to blow a kidney in 5 years, or in 10 years from now, I'm cutting off your left leg.
You'll be blind.
And 5 years after that, I'm cutting off the right. They won't change their diet.
I know, dude.
Yeah.
Just to defend.
I agree. It's a brilliant book out there. It's a brilliant book called Change Your Diet, and it's just about that. 90% of open heart surgery patients go back to their old habits in less than 12 months, you know. And Jay, when you mentioned my mom's on HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and they've got her in these torch pouches, which is a waste. So like he's saying, a lot of doctors just don't know how to physically administer this stuff, or they don't even really know what they're doing. And yeah, it's like I get guys that are like, well, I want to get on TRT because I want to look like Jim and Jay. And I'm like, well, you know, yeah, we all take, you know, we're all on TRT, but Jim and Jay, dude, it's 2 decades in the gym and massive, you know, dieting and working their ass off. It's not like you're gonna, you know, do a few injections with TRT and all of a sudden look like, you know, a fucking god, you know. You got to put in the work and with it. So okay, so next question: how to do a blood donation to reduce hematocrit, which I had to do. My blood was thick, right? Without becoming anemic.
Great question. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, most places, when you roll down to the Red Cross or whatever donation center you're going to do, they do an iron check for you.
Yep.
And typically, if you're at whatever level, because it's a slightly different depending on what organization you go to, they won't let you donate if you're too low. So it's kind of built in for that. You shouldn't have a problem with that. And typically, if you're on TRT and you're male in your late 30s or 40s, you're going to have plenty of iron. You're going to have a higher hematocrit. And doing even a double red cell donation every 6 weeks or whatever the organization limits you to have done is well within the range of you staying non-anemic and enough red blood cells to function. So that's not really a concern. There's kind of a built-in safety net, unless you're foolish enough to try to be doing them at home or something like that. But if you're going to an organized place, you're going to be fine. That's
a great answer. There's only one small caveat in there, and obviously Jim and I have dealt with this a couple of times personally. If you're HIV, you possess it, you have HIV, you're a man or woman, but I mean it's mostly dudes. You're going to have to get your doctor to write you a permission. It's like a permission slip for a phlebotomist or a donation bank to take your blood. Because if you go in there with HIV and you say, "Hey, I want to get checked for this," they're going to be like, "Oh."
Well, you don't have to have HIV. You just have to be a gay male or a bisexual.
Well, no,
male.
but I mean, if you have HIV and you admit that you have HIV, they're going to usually block you. It's just, again, that's not the whole vaccination thing.
But even in the questioning, if you're bi or homosexual, you can't donate. You're invalid. You can't. So you have to have a prescription for a phlebotomy.
That's what I mean. Right. You got to have a permission slip. Exactly. So I mean, just keep that in mind. And a lot of guys don't know that. And they come back to us and they're like, dude, I can't even give blood. And I've got a 52 hematocrit. I'm dying, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, it's very simple. Go back to your doctor, have them write you. Again, it's a permission slip. It's a permission notice to say that you're ordering or having it ordered that you can have your blood drawn so that you can not have hematocrit or erythropoiesis.
Or if you're using checked, Dr. Grossman can write you a script. They come to your house and do the blood. You do the donation on your couch.
Absolutely.
And I had to do that. I actually had to get a script as well, and not because I'm HIV or any of that, but because of the amount of tattoos I have.
Right.
They're like, dude, X amount of your body's covered in tattoos.
That's ridiculous.
I think I had a tattoo within 6 months, so they wouldn't allow me to donate, but I had to get a script. I think at the time it was through Dr. Brett Osborne and to give it. Now, what happens? Is there a situation where you're anemic and your hematocrit level is high and you got to give the blood and then you got to be careful with something, or is that just something that your physician should be handling with you?
I think that's that's an anomaly. That would be a very specialized situation, and you would be in charge of a physician's care for that.
Cool. All right. So I think Jay, you got to get jamming soon. So we'll kind of rapid fire. We got 3 more questions. We'll just kind of wrap.
We got plenty of time. I got like 20 minutes.
Okay, cool. So I was interested in discussing the quality of food choices. For example, grass-fed beef, locally grown, no antibiotic chicken. Is it worth the extra cost?
Yes. So any animal product, I beat you to it, Jay.
No, good answer.
So any product where you're getting fat from an animal should be organic. And why is that? Because in the fat of an animal, so animals expel toxins by a few ways, right? Respiration, perspiration, through milk, and then a lot of it gets stored in body fat, right? So when you eat a fat product from an animal like cottage cheese, dairy, cheese, the actual meat of an animal has fat on it, it will have toxins on it.
Absolutely.
If that animal's been exposed to antibiotics, to pesticides, all that, or if you think how many pesticides a normal cow ingests over its lifetime, if it's not a milk-producing cow, the majority of that is going to be retained in body fat. And so you go have a nice fat ribeye, guess what, man? You're having a serving of meat with a side of pesticides. And so that does build up in your body. So if you can afford it, the first way is to eat very low animal fat, right? So if you're going to eat a steak, make sure it's lean. If you're eating chicken, make sure it's lean. Cut out the dairy. Don't eat cottage cheese. If you do eat animal products that have fat in it, like dairy, like beef, whatever, try to make sure it's organic.
Yep. So let me add another rule in there, another Jay Campbell rule. If you're fat, you should not be eating dairy at all, period. End of story. The only dairy that you should be consuming would be like almond milk for protein shakes, or coconut milk, or coconut water. Not water, but dairy. Yeah. I mean, they're not even dairy, but I mean, you would consider them dairy because you would find them in your dairy aisle in your grocery store.
Like a fucking cheese stick.
Exactly. I mean, if that's actually a good point. So let's just stay there. If you are trying to lose body fat and you're eating dairy like cheese, right? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm going to eat string cheese because it's low carb and I can eat that." No. Cheese
is organic, just to clarify. Even if it's organic,
no. Dairy, again, this is the new Jay Campbell rule we're instituting. If you're fat and you're trying to lose body fat, you should not be eating dairy, period.
It comes back to our easy check, right?
Yes.
When you have a doubt and you're looking at a food and you say, well, should I eat it or not? Okay, is it a meat or a vegetable? If the answer is no, then your answer is no.
Exactly.
Right? Meat and vegetables, guys. Lean meats and vegetables.
Cheeses, no. Lard, curds, all that stuff, no. But back to the organic, because personal story. It was about a year ago that again, mentor boy here got me to start eating grass-fed beef. And dude, as you know now, Josh, yourself, I mean, that stuff comparatively to, well, let me give you a good comparison so people can understand this. Break it down. Let's say you're somebody, you feel like you're dialed in, you got your body fat super low, you're a 10% dude, you got your training dialed in, you're successful in your life, but you're using ground turkey that you get at Vons or, Albertsons or whatever. That stuff is so laden and riddled with toxins, as Jim said, in the fat, the glands and all the stuff of the animals when they're, carved up and butchered and all that stuff. You don't have any idea until you stop taking it for 4 to 6 months and replace it with grass-fed beef. I'm one of those guys, and I did it. It's been about a year. I mean, honestly, it's literally been about a year since we started, because I remember I did a post last year on the blog about, changing my meal prep, hiring the college student to come over and cook the grass-fed beef. And I'm not kidding you. I mean, I'm doing a post on TRT Revolution pretty soon about, Jim's advice and all these things he's doing. But that's like one of the central tenets of the message, that, the small little tiny things that we do, but that cleaned up me and Monica from so many levels, our brain function. It's Josh, it's true. I mean, like, I was never one of those people that believed in like organic or, grass-fed versus not, but using it and experiencing it, and now being a year away from eating any kind of meat or beef that's not organic. Oh my God, dude, the difference is so much greater. I mean, and you'll see in our physiques, because I'm going to have some pictures of what I look like when I just got down my body fat, when we were down in Cabo, and I've never been stronger. I've never been more vascular. I've never been leaner. And I feel better. And I'm not, again, it's Jay Campbell, 150 milligrams a week of testosterone. I don't do anything else. Obviously I do cardio, but it's the little things that you do when you get dialed that make all the difference in the world. And there is no question that eating organic, especially beef, and I specify beef, grass-fed beef over everything else, is a massive night and day difference. Literally.
Yeah, and check this out, those of you watching and listening. My daughter, this is when she was in first grade. we were thinking about holding her back because she was having a tough time with reading, focus, all this stuff. And she's one of those, like, she'll be 17 her whole senior year. Like, we started her a little bit early. We were kind of on that cusp. We switched to a full-on organic diet, and within 30 days, she was most improved in her class. And from that point on, the focus has been there straight A's since. And even our kids, I mean, it's made such a massive difference. So let me ask you guys this, though, when it comes to because, we're all big proponents on hormone replacement therapy. And now they're pumping all these animals full of so many chemicals. I mean, what element? I know there's so much out there, so it's tough to say that. How much do you think that plays a role in jacking us up?
It does.
Well, and there's been a phenomenon. There's some guys that have done some real research on this, and it's true, man. If you're intaking a lot of pesticide-laden foods, you're going to have a layer of belly fat that you cannot get rid of.
Can't get rid of it.
And this has been kind of, I don't want to say proven, but it's practice-based, been proven that this is the case, man. Especially Jay alluded to it earlier. If you're eating ground turkey, that's just ground turkey from Costco or Sam's Club or whatever. It's not organic. It's not antibiotic free. That is the highest amount of laden food.
Shit. Worthless.
And I would have never guessed. You actually have to research and find that. And I was eating that stuff by the pounds.
Josh, I'm living proof that what Jim just said, I'm living proof of that being the case. I mean, I used to have a layer, like a little riddle, right around my abdominal area or the navel area. I would have a little roll, not a roll, but just like a level of chub that I couldn't get rid of. And it's gone now. I mean, like when I diet down now, like, eating the way that I eat, it's simple to get rid of. I used to have these long, drawn-out conversations with Jim. Oh, it's got to be something to do with estrogen. I just can't get my estrogen low enough. I got to use an AI or I got to use a higher dose of an AI just around getting shredded. I mean, there's so many things that go on, but there's no question, because I am, again, living proof now for 1 year that there is some sort of contaminant, particulate, whatever it is, that's in that. It's like Jim said, it's pesticide for sure. It's a chemical that is getting into our skin and getting into our dermis and preventing.
You're intaking those pesticides, and we, just like a cow, right? We respirate, we perspirate, we urinate, all that to get rid of it. The rest gets stored in our body fat.
It sits there.
So,
sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Just be selective, man. Be selective. I'm not a big guy on you have to have everything organic, not every fruit, every vegetable, all that stuff. Of course, those taste better. There's a different quality of taste in them. But if you're going to change anything and spend your money wisely on food choices, make sure that any animal product is organic.
And then what I found too, man, is when you eat organic, you don't have to eat as much. Like these chicken breasts were like this damn big, dude. And when I eat organic, it's like this big, and it's the same amount of protein. And
Well, Josh, you hit something on the. I want to go back. So why your daughter is feeling the way that she's feeling is her brain chemistry improved because the essential fatty acids in the organic meats are stimulating certain neurotransmitters and other, potentiators in her brain pathways that she wasn't getting from the pesticide-laden crap that you guys were feeding her previously, and all of our kids are eating. And so there's absolutely no doubt about it that those essential fatty acids clear up your brain pathways and help them have more energy and, of course, more focus.
Yep, absolutely, man. Okay, next question. When you're losing fat or you want to lose fat, and do it in a healthy manner, what's a good target? Is it 1 pound a week, 2 pounds a week? Is there something you strive for as far as a good healthy target?
Depends how much fat you're going to lose.
Yeah, it's your weight. If you're morbidly obese and you have never dieted in your life and you eat a massive surplus of calories and you're now committed and focused, again, remember it's that conversation we had last week. If you got 1 foot in the grave, you got your blood work back, and all of a sudden now you're like, holy shit, this is it, man. This is my last chance. Then you easily could lose 3 to 4 pounds, maybe even 5 pounds a week of like a little bit of water and a little bit of adipose tissue for a month. You know what I'm saying? For maybe 2 months. I mean, maybe 3 months if you're morbidly obese. If you got 100 pounds to go, then you could lose what, Jim? Probably 7 to 10 pounds a week if you're doing everything right.
It's relative, man. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
I don't, unless you have a specific time goal, like you're doing a show or something like that, I don't get too tied up into that as long as we're seeing progress week to week. And that's why the people that we coach, we usually do a weigh-in and a millimeter site reading every week or every 2 weeks. And as long as we're seeing progress, then that's fine. Unless it's a time-sensitive kind of deal, like a date. So if you're doing a show in 8 weeks and you had 6% body fat to lose, then yeah, we do the math and say, hey, you got to lose at least this much a week. But I think the overall goal, and especially to make this a sustainable lifestyle, we're just looking for improvements every day, man. It doesn't have to be a pound a week, but it has to be, an improvement during the week. Could be a quarter pound, could be a half a pound, could be you're looking better in the mirror. But as long as you're moving towards that goal and moving towards a sustainable lifestyle.
So what do you guys tell somebody that's like, okay, let's say you're really out of shape and you all of a sudden you start eating right, you start working out. Yeah, you're going to start dropping a lot of weight instantaneously, and eventually you hit a wall. And it's very easy to get discouraged when you hit the wall. Oh, this isn't working anymore. Screw it, I just give up. Or like, what do you say when you hit those walls to keep going? And because at some point it's got to slow down, right? So like, how do you encourage people to keep going? Because we've all hit those walls, dude. That screw it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, well, especially a good point is when you first start a diet, typically you're not going to see any results for 5 to 6 weeks.
No.
And that's discouraging, but you got to hang in there. You got to have the faith that it's going to work. And then all of a sudden you'll start to notice changes, and then you go for a while. And then to your point again, you'll hit a wall. And, some of it depends on where you're at or wherever. I mean, the leaner you get, the harder it is to go. But you just got to have faith in the process, man, and know that it's not going to happen overnight. And again, that this is a lifestyle. Hopefully you're not just going to get lean for a week and then put it all back on, right? We want to get to that space where we're comfortable taking our shirt off 365 and walking out to the pool or the beach and being comfortable, right? I mean, that's the goal. You want to have that year round. You want to be functional. Your body wants to work. You want to be healthy, all those things. And you want to be comfortable in your own skin, comfortable enough to walk out to the pool. I mean, that's what the majority of us are all after. And that's a lifestyle. That doesn't mean, you're going to hit a wall and give up. That means you're changing your life, you're changing your diet, and it's all conducive to that goal. And so this is a long haul, man. It's not a 4 or 6 week, a 30-day challenge. This is a lifestyle change that you're going to improve your life from here until the day you die.
Yeah, I love it. I think that, Jim and Jay and I, before we started, we hit the record button, we're talking about creating our own kind of a 90-day challenge program. And the reason that we're doing that is it's a 90-day challenge, but it's to create the habits over a 90-day period that become a lifelong habit, that becomes a lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
I just, I hate to see somebody do a 30-day diet or a week cleanse and they lost 5 pounds and then you blow up afterwards. It's, it's not that. It's, you have to build those habits in, and that takes at least 90 days. When you first start a diet fresh, I mean, you're not going to see any results for a while. Right. You're going to see the initial drop of water and glycogen, but then you got to hang in there, man. You got to have faith in the process and know that it's going to come, and it will. You just got to stick with it.
Yeah, it's like I drank all this green juice for a week. I lost 20 pounds. I'm like, well, what's next, dude?
Right. Yeah, let's go to KFC, right? We're done.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, my only thought, I'm just echoing both of you guys. There's no such thing as a diet. It's a lifestyle. It's an insulin-controlled lifestyle. It's anything that's relative to your individual goals. And as we know, all of our goals, they change over our life. And if they're not changing, then you're stagnant and you're not expanding. Monica and I have a saying around us, and this, Josh, that it's constant and never-ending improvement. We live our life about expansion, about being intentional. I got that from Josh, and literally just never sitting and accepting the status quo, because once you become acceptance of the status quo, then you become stagnant, So that's the way your life around your diet should be too. I mean, okay, great. You're morbidly obese and you become like Josh. Now what? Guess what? You've accomplished 95% more than any human on the planet will ever do in their life. But is that all you want? I mean, are you happy now just to look like Josh? I mean, isn't there probably something else you're going to want to do? Wow, you just did something that hardly anybody can do. So what's next? What next for Josh might be, well, we know what for Josh is, but for somebody like Josh who does the same thing, maybe you want to compete. Maybe one day you want to do a photo shoot just to have that picture on your mantelpiece to say, hey, I did this, I can always do this. I mean, at the end of the day, humans were motivated by our desires and we're motivated by behavioral modified results. So what allows us to modify our behavior to get us end game meaning or result? that's the big picture. I mean, if you're not living your life to improve it or to look for something bigger and better than what you're currently at, then, you're living, in my opinion, a stale, bland life.
So, I was asked this question earlier today. This isn't one of the questions that we have, but I was asked this question by somebody that reached out to me earlier, one of my real estate coaching clients, and he asked me, he goes, there's this big movement of kind of like the big and beautiful of, yeah, I'm overweight, but I'm happy with myself. And I'm like, all that's great. Like, I love people like accepting yourself and being self-confident, but there becomes, there's health risks associated to that. You get to a point like, what do you guys say to that movement that exists? Because at the end of the day, your waist gets above a certain circumference. It puts pressure on your kidneys. Like, there's a health aspect to it, right?
Honestly, dude, I don't want to, me, I can go all down the conspiracy J. Campbell rabbit hole and stuff. That's fucking bullshit, okay? There's no such thing as being fat and being and accepting it. If you're fat, your health is at risk. End of story. You could have some, voodoo witch doctor, mindset coach, Shylock or whatever you want to call him, get in your face and say, it's okay. Being fat is okay. Not if you want to live a long, productive, healthy life. It's not.
I mean, if you're truly happy in your own skin and you're overweight or you're considered fat, and again, I'll use the measure. You take your shirt off and walk down the beach and you got man tits or whatever it is, and it doesn't bother you at all. Good for you, man. You're in a good space. But then we'll talk about health.
Right.
Are you healthy? Some of those people are healthy, but it's not the best health you can be in. And we can go back and forth on semantics of that. But
well, yeah, I mean, Josh, my mom's morbidly obese, but she's not healthy. But when she goes to the doctors and she gets her biomarkers measured, she's not at risk. But she's close to 400 pounds. And she can't walk up the stairs, and she can't do anything with her grandkids, and she can't travel across the country to see her successful, sons and daughters and their grandkids. So there is a balance. I mean, this is no judgment because everybody who knows me, you guys do. I'm not judging anybody. If you're, like Jim said, if you're overweight or morbidly obese, but you're happy and you accept yourself and others accept you for who you are, that's great. But again, that's not being healthy.
And if your movement is limited because of your weight,
exactly,
or you can't go
everyone who's fat's movement is limited.
Well, I mean, if you can't bend over to tie your shoes, or if you're uncomfortable, if you can't change the tire on your car if you had to, I mean, those are all things that the functionality of your body that leads to me, it's a more fulfilled life,
right?
And so there's a lot of aspects to that, man. If you're one of those people and you don't want to look like me, hey, I get it, man. A lot of people don't, or you don't want to be lean or you don't want to put in effort. I totally get it, man. I totally get it. But to me, it's a better life experience being comfortable in my own skin. I can go run down the beach. I can at least use my body to go, I can use it as a vessel, right? I can go on a hike. I can go swim. I can do, most of the normal things a 45-year-old dude can do.
Right.
And that to me is a higher quality of life. And that's what I strive to achieve.
Well, it's like Josh always says, right? Like, what are his biggest goals? Like energy maximization, GSD mode. I mean, this whole life is based on like, how do I maximize my energy? How do I make the most out of my life? I mean, let's just be honest. You can't maximize your life or your energy or both if you're not in good, functionally strong, healthy, lean shape. Now, again, no judgment if that's not what you want, because you have a choice. We're all humans. We have free will, as long as you don't live in China. But the reality is that you literally can, be accepting and loving of yourself in any physical condition, but don't confuse the two of being healthy and being accepted for not being healthy if you're not healthy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was interviewed on this it was Young Entrepreneur podcast the other day, and they asked me about my, being in shape and why I take it so serious. I'm like, for a couple of reasons. One, the health aspects, energy management. I'm like, also being married, like I owe it to my damn wife. Yes. Like why should she deserve to get married to a dude that just lets himself go and become a slob? Like I owe it to her. I got this sexy little girl that
absolutely
deserves a dude that's in epic shape. So it's not just for selfish reasons. Like you owe it to your significant other to be in great shape.
Totally.
The other thing I said to him, I said, dude, I've been both extremes. I said, I don't know one overweight dude that's like, oh shit, man, I never would want a 6-pack to go to the beach, checking me out. Either or vice versa, girl. Like no girl would say, oh, I would never want to go to the beach, be in a bikini, and have dudes looking at me.
Exactly.
You know, right? No bullshit. You know, you could justify how you want to justify your head, but the reality is we want it. So
totally true.
I just figured I would hit at that because I was asked that earlier today. So last question that we have today, and this is something that is real, right? Because we all know what to do, whether it's business, whether it's nutrition, whether it's like we know what to do. We just don't do what we know sometimes what to be doing. You know, so what are some of the challenges? How do you overcome some of the challenges of staying focused long term? You know, essentially like keep doing this stuff that you got to do every single day to have success with this, even though you're like, dude, screw it, I just want to eat the ice cream.
So it's an amazing question. I'll go first, and then Jim, you can finish it, and because I already shut it down here in a second. But like, this is so simple and so it's simplistic. But you know, my wife, and Josh knows this, and obviously Jim knows this now too. My wife, Monica, she loves the idea of a planned vacation, whether that's 2 or 3 exotic trips or destinations around the globe every year. Like, every time I come back from a vacation, right, I dieted down, I did everything I needed to do, you know, paid all the bills, did all the things we had to do it. Like, I'm coming back and I'm setting now, okay, now I got to plan another vacation for my wife to make her happy. And it's 4 months away, or it's 6 months away, or it's 3.5 months away. So I think what I'm saying, the take-home message of this is you should always have the carrot set at another level. Again, that whole constant and never-ending improvement mindset, so that even when you do meet your goals and continually get to where you want to go, and obviously I feel like we do that, you don't become complacent because there's the next one that's just sitting out there, whether it's 3, 6, 9, 4 months away, whatever. And so it's just this constant flux of, okay, I got there, but let's keep going. And I know where you guys can go with this, and you can attack my logic, and you can say, well, then you've got that mindset. You know, Mike Cernovich says this of what's enough. You know, when do you truly have enough? You know, because like it's like, you know, you got a nice car, but you want a nicer car. You've got $1 million in the bank, but you want $5 million in the bank, whatever. The reality is that it's got to be something that you accept as, again, enough, but at the same time, you still put the carrot out there so that there's something for you to strive for continually.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It's I had a real issue when I stopped competing competitively because I did that for like 17 years straight, man. And so when that's your life, I mean, you're on a time schedule, right? Okay, I got these 3 months, I'm going to gain mass, or I'm going to concentrate on this or bring this up, and then I'm going to do this, and my diet starts here. You know, it's very structured for physique-wise. You know, now to Jay's point, you know, I had a goal, hey, I want to stay under 10% year-round. Well, sometimes you got to play some mind games to do that, man. And something like mini vacations or setting vacations, or hey, you know, I'm going to start hitting the beach in June or whatever, to have those goals to keep you kind of in check. And that definitely helps, man. That's very helpful. You know, one of the other things is leveling up. I mean, you want to constantly improve yourself. You got to set goals and keep yourself to a schedule, man. That's the way I do it.
Awesome.
Yep. Love it. Love it. Yeah, it all comes down to getting clarity in what you want, whether it's business, whether it's your health and fitness, just getting an idea of why you're doing what you're doing, thinking long-term, and having those deep conversations. So, all right, I know you got to bounce. Jay, I know you got an appointment. So that's all the questions that we have today. Really appreciate you guys that are watching this, listening to this. Really appreciate you guys being here. If you have any questions you want answered, again, shoot us an email to JimAndJay@gsdmode.com. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.
Awesome, guys. Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon, man. You guys take care.